As the stars began to sparkle across the evening sky, the small town nestled at the base of the mountains grew quiet. The warm glow of oil lamps flickered in the windows, and the cool mountain breeze drifted softly over the rooftops. In a little stone home near the edge of town, children were wrapping themselves in blankets, preparing for rest. But tonight, something felt extra special. Word had spread through the village. Jesus was visiting. Not with crowds or miracles, not tonight. Tonight, he had come simply to rest and to listen to the mountains. That evening, Jesus walked alone into the hills as the sun dipped behind the peaks. The sky turned golden, then a soft purple. He moved with calm steps, his sandals gently brushing the earth and his robe fluttering in the breeze. The mountains stood tall, silent, and ancient. But to Jesus, they whispered. He sat on a smooth rock that overlooked the valley. The trees rustled gently, and the stream nearby babbled like a lullaby. Jesus smiled. "You're singing again," he whispered to the earth, "just like in the beginning." He closed his eyes. In the quiet, he heard the voice of the Father, not loud, not thunderous, just a soft whisper in his heart. "My son, I am with you, always." As he sat, memories drifted into his mind like feathers on the wind. He remembered the first time he climbed a mountain with his disciples, the laughter, the shared bread, the lessons spoken gently under the sun. But this night was different. Tonight was about stillness. A small fawn wandered near him, unafraid. Jesus opened his eyes and watched it step softly through the grass. "Even the smallest creatures feel peace here," he whispered. In the quiet of the mountains, time seemed to slow. The wind moved like a gentle hand across the hills. The stars peeked through the clouds, and Jesus simply sat, listening. Far below, in the village, a boy named Eli couldn't sleep. His grandmother had told him that Jesus was near. Eli's eyes sparkled with curiosity, and his heart tugged him out the door. Barefoot and brave, he followed the trail up the mountain, lit only by the moon. Halfway up, he began to worry. The path grew dark, and the wind grew cool. But just then, a warm light glowed ahead, soft, golden, and welcoming. He stepped into a clearing, and there was Jesus, sitting quietly on a rock, with his hands folded gently in his lap. He looked up and smiled. "Hello, Eli," Jesus said, as if he had been expecting him. Eli blinked. "You know my name?" "I do," Jesus replied with a soft nod. "And I know you've been wondering why the mountains whisper at night." Eli stepped closer. "I thought maybe they were singing." Jesus smiled. "They are. All of creation sings when it feels peace." Eli sat beside him. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of warmth, full of comfort, full of something deeper than words. Jesus looked at the stars. "Even the heavens sing. Do you hear it?" Eli closed his eyes. He could. A soft hum in the air, the whisper of trees, the distant call of an owl, the gentle trickle of water. He opened his eyes slowly. "It's beautiful." Jesus looked at him kindly. "When your heart is still, you'll hear the voice of God everywhere, even in the silence." They sat together side by side, beneath the stars. Jesus didn't need to perform a miracle tonight. His presence was the miracle. As the moon climbed higher, Jesus placed his hand gently on Eli's shoulder. "Come, little one. Let me walk you home." They walked down the mountain path, and Jesus spoke gently along the way. Stories about love, about kindness, and about the joy of listening. Not just with ears, but with the heart. At the edge of the village, Jesus knelt down. "You are never alone, Eli. Even when the world is quiet, even when you feel small, I am with you." hugged him tightly. "Will you stay?" Jesus smiled, a twinkle in his eyes. "I am always near." And just like that, he turned and walked into the night, his figure glowing softly beneath the moonlight. Back in bed, Eli closed his eyes. The mountains were still whispering, and now he understood why. Peace wrapped around him like a blanket, and somewhere far above the stars continued their silent, joyful song. And Jesus, gentle, loving Jesus, smiled from the hills, watching over all. As the sun dipped low behind the Galilean hills, the sky began to glow with soft purples and golds. The disciples were resting by a small brook just outside a quiet village. Jesus sat on a smooth stone beneath an olive tree, the leaves rustling above him like a lullaby whispered from heaven. Children from the village had gathered around him, some leaning against his legs, others curled up on the grass. Their eyes were full of wonder, their tiny hearts open to every word. Jesus smiled gently and placed his hand on one of the boys, whispering, "Let the little ones come to me." The breeze carried the scent of wildflowers and the faint sound of sheep in the distance. The disciples sat nearby, tired but at peace. Peter leaned back on his elbows, listening. John lay on his side, smiling at the calmness that surrounded their teacher. Then Jesus spoke softly. "Do you hear that?" he asked. The children looked around. "What, Rabbi?" one girl whispered. "The quiet," he said. "Even silence can carry the voice of God." He looked up at the stars, just beginning to blink into view. "Sometimes we want God to speak with thunder," he continued. "But often, he speaks like this, like a whisper in the wind, like a warm light inside your heart." A hush fell over the group. Even the birds above quieted as if listening. "Tonight," Jesus said, "I want to tell you a secret, one that many grown-ups forget." The children leaned in closer. "You are never alone. Not in the dark, not in storms, not when you're scared. My Father watches over you even when you sleep, and I do too." One of the youngest boys whispered, "Even when I'm afraid of the night?" Jesus nodded with love. "Especially then." The boy reached for Jesus' hand, and Jesus took it, gently wrapping his fingers around the boy's tiny palm. The disciples watched, deeply moved. Thomas whispered to Andrew, "How does he always know exactly what they need?" Andrew smiled, "Because he's the shepherd, and they are his lambs." Then Jesus stood and lifted his hands toward the sky. "Father," he prayed, "let your peace cover these little ones like a blanket. Let your light guide them even in their dreams. Speak softly to them so they remember they are yours." The stars now shimmered like diamonds. Jesus turned to his friends. "Let's stay here tonight. The earth is soft and heaven is close." They built a small fire. Jesus wrapped a blanket around one of the smallest children, who had fallen asleep against his shoulder. The group slowly settled in, the night quiet and sacred. As everyone drifted to sleep, a light wind moved through the trees, soft, gentle, like the whisper of grace. And in the quiet, Jesus watched the stars above, knowing that even in rest, his Father was near.